Aloha. Zakir, please.
Yes, aloha. This is Zakir. And therefore I hope this is Mr. Lawrence. You're from Hawaii. I'm from India. We are both laid back.
Thank you, brother. God bless you. I really do appreciate it.
Oh no,
Grateful.
it's my pleasure, and I'm glad we could talk.
March 21st on Maui, March 22nd on the Big Island, March 24th in the Honolulu area. Do I have the full lineup there?
Yes, you do.
Fantastic.
Thank you.
Well, first and foremost, a big welcome and thank you for doing this. I appreciate it.
It is my pleasure, sir.
And
How's it going at the public radio over there?
it's going good and a lot better when we have somebody like you joining us. Have you ever spoken to this public radio station in your long career?
I doubt. Actually, I may have done that many moons ago. May have been about 8, 9 years ago. That I came there to play with the orchestra in Honolulu. It was the triple concerto, which myself, the banjo maestro Bela Fleck, and the classical bassist, great Edgar Meyer, had written together. And that concerto was performed by the Honolulu Symphony.
I remember that, actually. Now that you mention it, it was a long time ago.
And at that time, I think the three of us actually came to the station.
Wow. Okay. That was impressive. And
yeah, and spoke there, and it was a very nice visit, actually.
I have no doubt that it was. So you're coming back. You've got these shows. Now, for folks up here who are interested in listening, because you can imagine they're driving home, it's drive time, they may not be so familiar with the music, so trying to reach them and say exactly what this is. Try to describe who you're bringing with you and what you guys are going to be doing on this visit.
Well, I'm bringing with me, it's a duo show, and in a sense it's a traditional Indian performance that we are doing. It's me on percussion, Indian instrument tabla, and Niladri Kumar playing the sitar. Now, by many connoisseurs and musicians all over the country in India and fans all across the planet of Indian music, Niladri is considered the next great after the great Ravi Shankar to be the flag bearer of this particular art form with the sitar as the voice. And so it's amazing to have him with me. He's really an amazing player, a monster if in the American terms, and somebody I hate truly for being as good as he is. But it's, it lights the fire under my bum, and I'm happy to try to lock horns with him and play with him. When I say lock horns, it's very clear because, we are improvising. We are playing music that, has two simple things laid out, which is a melody and of course, a rhythm pattern that the melody rides on. And after that, it's just let's take it and run with it and see how much you can expand it, how many combinations and permutations of the melody or the rhythm pattern you can come up with, and how you would be able to do it in together so that it appears to be a conversation between two people. And so that's basically what we're going to be doing, and it's going to be a lot of fun because the audience hopefully is involved. Their reaction inspires us to take the subject into areas where it may not have been before, and in that sense, the music becomes a creative process that involves not only the musicians but also the audience. And once it's done, and the audience goes home and we go home, it's an experience that we take with us, and knowing fully well that this will never happen in this way again. It's a special experience for just us, and we take it home with us, and so that's what's unique and special about this particular art form. And I'm hoping that the audience will come with an open mind and be ready to take the ride with us.
When you talk about locking horns, and it makes me think of that, I guess it was 1975, that Shakti record that was live, and those, I forget where it is on there, but there's just some ferocious jams. And so as you were describing what this show is going to be like, do I have it right that there will be those sort of climactic back and forth sort of things between you guys where you take it to that really emotional climax?
It will get there, and it may not happen in the first piece, but may happen in the second piece,
Right,
but we'll get there. But the whole process, I'm looking at it, keeping in mind that Niladri Kumar is the young star of India at the moment. We're going to probably start with a traditional Indian form and explore that, and then move to where the music is today from the eye of and the ears of the younger generation of musicians, and then also kind of end with where it might be going to. And so in that sense, it's going to be a journey of Indian music from what it was, 1,000 years ago to where it's headed. And so you will hear traditional form, you will hear traditional sounds, you will hear traditional raga and melody, and we will interact with each other and take it to that climactic level. But you may also hear a more modern take of the semi-classical forms and the folk music that is such an important part of the Indian raga system, and put a more modern take on it. So you'll hear all that.
When you talk about that time travel, if you will, of music that goes back so long and bringing it into a contemporary form, and then also representing sort of what might happen in the future, it makes me think of your own life, which is a fascinating background, something that I guess over the course of hundreds of interviews that happen with different musicians on the show that we've discovered, which I'm sure you'll understand, is this early childhood experience and how it factors into people's lives, in some cases shaping their entire career. In your case, I have read, and maybe have it wrong, but when I think about your strong connection to music, explain how your background includes parents with their own strong connection to music and beginning to have you play percussion at the age of 3?
Yes, I mean, when as a child who's 2 days old and you're brought home, and the first thing you hear is your father holding you in his arm and singing rhythms in your ear. And that becoming a routine, a daily routine of having those rhythms piped into your ear, and not really having any clue of the world. I mean, you can't even see clearly as a 3-day-old child or a 4-day-old child, but you're hearing all this stuff, and it's being piped into you, and it's sitting in your subconscious mind. And by the time you're a year or 2 years old, you've got this whole incredible language that's revealing itself to you, and it's kind of guiding you without you really knowing, and you find yourself beating on a table or on a pot and pans and just doing that and not really knowing what it is. So for me, that's what my connection with the music was. It was on a level which was not only just conscious, but at a subconscious level. And so whether I was sleeping and dreaming it, or walking and singing it, it was always in my DNA in a way that it circulated on a daily basis as my blood would through my nervous system. And so it's been that way, and I don't see that's going to change. But what's great about it is that I love it. I'm so attached to it, and so by the time I was 3 years old, I was already kind of playing those syllables, those sounds that were in my head, and sorting it out on whatever was there to bang on, and that led to my father's students helping me along, and by the time I was 7, I was actually playing concerts, and that hasn't stopped. I became a professional, made my first Indian rupees playing when I was 12 years old, and started traveling the length and breadth of the country, alone at that age, just me and my tabla, and going and playing concerts in so many different cities in India. So that hasn't stopped, and all through this, I have to say, I have had guidance of great musicians who I ended up playing with. I was playing with Ravi Shankar when I was 16, and I was playing with Ali Akbar Khan when I was the same age, and of course with my father and so many other great musicians. So the learning process was continuous and ongoing, and it still hasn't stopped. It still continues every time I play with a new musician, like playing with Niladri Kumar. the young sitar player is, again, a learning process, because I'm looking at and hearing the music from their point of view, and it's a whole different take on it, and it's exciting to be able to hear that language and try to decipher it and be part of that conversation. So, and I'm happy that I get to do that at my age. I've played with about 4 generations of Indian musicians, and I find myself to be one of the luckiest rhythm cats around in that world.
That's a great way of putting it, rhythm cats. And something that I'm going to go out on a limb and guess that most of us in the conversation right now who are listening have not had the chance to grow up in Mumbai, India, or spend the kind of time that you have there. And if maybe people listening are huge fans of Indian food, perhaps they're going to have some chicken saag or some aloo gobi tonight. But for yourself, paint a little picture of the ways, because now I know you've had a lot of time to reflect on it. How are the ways that Indian culture is? People might be fascinated by the way that music was wrapped around you, or just things that stick out of your own growing up there.
Well, the Indian culture. I mean, look, we were under the influence of the British Raj for a couple of hundred years. And so that culture also seeped into us. Portuguese people were also on the coastal regions of India, and they lived there for 350 years. So that seeped into us as well. And so when I was in Mumbai, which is the area where the Brits and the Portuguese had a large influence on, I was hearing fado, or I was hearing Western classical music, or the church was just down the road, so you were hearing hymns and novenas and so on. And so my life, let me tell you how my day began. My day began at 3 a.m. in the morning when my father would wake me up as a 7 or 8-year-old kid, and then he would talk rhythms with me, and we would sing syllables and the language, and he would tell me about compositions, and he would tell me where they came from and the significance of it and who was responsible of it and all the great masters and all those stories. And then come 6 o'clock, my mother would snatch me from him and pump some breakfast into me, and then I would be shoved off to the madrasa, where I would learn to read the Quran. And that would go on for an hour or so, and precisely at about 8 o'clock I'd cross the street and march right into St. Michael's High School Church, where I would join my classmates and we would sing the hymns, and then march to the tune of the Bridge on River Kwai. You hear that? That tune, and it played loudly on the speakers, and we as students would walk to our respective classrooms, and then and I would learn history, geography, math, whatever. But the interesting thing is, with my father, I would traverse through the Hindu mythology, learning about the gods and goddesses who are involved with this art form, and then I would learn about the Islamic world, going and doing the madrasa, and then I would arrive and be in a world which dealt with the apostles and Jesus and the archangels and all that and everything, and so I would traverse these incredibly different worlds in a space of hours every day. But what was interesting to me that later it occurred to me when I grew up was that none of these people, none of these representative and keepers of these ways of life ever stressed into me that theirs was the right way. That never happened. It was always, oh yes, here's your teaching, learn this, but never was, okay, don't learn that, only learn this. That never happened. And so I grew up with all these ways of life, these kind of living and these thought processes as normal, as being one, not being different. And so that is something that happened in the music, because when I was talking about the Hindu deities, we were doing that through rhythms. When I was talking about the Islamic Quran, we were singing as, the way to sing the Quran as they do in the Islamic world. And when I would arrive in the church, we would sing the hymns and march to the rhythms. and so it was always music that was the tying thread between all this. So that culturally stayed with me and has still been with me. I can, for the life of me, even if I tried, never separate Christianity from Islam or Islam from Hinduism. For me, there is no difference, and the music ties it all together.
Oh, that's a great way of looking at it, and that is that's a fascinating history. So, just to be clear, so your mother and father, you're growing up in India. Your mom and dad were not Hindu.
They were strict conservative Muslims. But my father, being a musician, was brought up as a musician into the culture of Indian music, which is from the temples of India, where all the gods and goddesses come from. So it was an interesting dichotomy. I mean, here he was a conservative Muslim. He went to pray every Friday to the mosque, but at the same time, he bowed to the elephant god, Lord Ganesha, or talked about Lord Shiva, the one who's portrayed in the sculptures with a drum in his hand, or Saraswati, the goddess who's shown as carrying the veena, the instrument that sitar came from, and or Lord Krishna, who's the god who's shown playing the flute. I mean, so it was an interesting thing for him too. The only difference what he had to deal with Islam and Hinduism as being one. I had to deal with Islam, Hinduism, Catholicism all being as one, and it has been an incredible journey to be able to live through all these thoughts and kind of tie them as my own way of looking at life.
And as if that wasn't enough ingredients, and sort of a great follow-up to that, you're associated with, aside from those stories and your connections in India and how you were influenced by your father and by multiple cultures and faiths, you are associated with at least two major cats in the Western world, John McLaughlin, and then there's also Mickey Hart from the Grateful Dead. And which of those two guys did you intersect with first?
My first interaction was with Mickey Hart, actually.
Wow.
And that was in 1971. I met Mickey in my father's apartment in Los Angeles. My father was, he was traveling with Ravi Shankar, and they were touring a lot, playing concerts for 30 years and so on. The time when they were just cooling off between tours or between concerts, they stay in L.A. So my father had an apartment there, and I would go see him. And so I was there, and Mickey Hart walked in because Mickey was learning from him, learning the rhythms of India and how to transpose them onto the drum kit. And so that's what happened. And then Mickey asked him on that visit, when I was there, to come up to his studio and help him record his first solo album. And my father said, well, listen, I'm on tour, and at the same time, I'm tied into my ways. I'm a traditionalist. It might be difficult for me to, cross over completely, but you can have my son play with you. He's more young, and he's, into doing all non-Indian everything, so take him. But my father said, I will come for one day, and I will start the process off, and then I'll be gone. So that's what happened. My father came to the studio, and he started the process by playing, a pattern sort of, and I played along with him, which became one of the seed ideas of a song that Grateful Dead do called "Playing in the Band."
Wow!
and that was one of the songs that was on the album of Mickey Hart's first album called Rolling Thunder, and then I spent many week or two playing down rhythm tracks for all other kind of songs that happened, and ever since we've been together, and we just had another record called Ramood that came out last year, and we are working on a record now, in fact, and so 40 years down the road, we are still friends, we are still working, and it's a blessing. John McLaughlin is somebody I met in 1972, actually. And in a strange circumstance, I was doing a tabla workshop in an instrument place in New York called House of Musical Traditions, and John McLaughlin walked in, wanting to get a vocal lesson because he heard there's an Indian musician there, and so he came thinking that he would be able to get a vocal lesson, and instead it was me giving rhythm lesson. But I somehow gave, in a comical way, gave him a vocal lesson, and we became friends. And after that, he came to San Francisco, and we met, and we played together, and it was such a fabulous experience that it led to us coming together and getting a band together with the violinist El Shankar, calling it Shakti. And so that happened in 1974. So I was already with Mickey a year earlier. And what the funniest thing is, 1974 was a landmark moment for me because Mickey and I did an album called Diga, the first ever drum orchestra record involving drums from all over the world. And we did that in 1974, and the first Shakti record was also done in 1974. So those were landmark moments for me, and they came out, and life has not been the same since. And ever since then, I played with Charles Lloyd, with Herbie Hancock, with Van Morrison, Earth, Wind and Fire, done orchestral pieces with symphony orchestras, and written music for contemporary ballets in America, and it's just been a wondrous journey with two very special guides who are my mentors outside of India, and that is Mickey Hart and John McLaughlin.
And great way of summing it up. And obviously, you've had a lot of experience telling some of these stories over the years. Talk about getting to play on stage with the Grateful Dead.
Of course. One of the places that they played regularly here was called Winterland in San Francisco, and also Fillmore West. So what would happen was Mickey Hart and I did this record called Diga with a lot of rhythm players from the neighborhood, and so more often than not, we would open to the Grateful Dead, or we would open to another local band which was popular, known as Jefferson Starship.
Right.
Actually Jefferson Airplane,
right.
But later became Jefferson Starship. And so what would happen was we would open to them, we would play first, and then it would lead into the Grateful Dead or the Jefferson Starship coming on the stage and joining us for our final piece. And so it would be a jam session, and then we'd go away, and then they would, Grateful Dead would play their set, and somewhere towards the end of the set, I would come on with Mickey and Bill Kreutzmann, and we would have a jam session. And we'd play a piece that would continue, God knows, 30, 40 minutes.
Right.
So that happened on a regular basis. And so I've been a part of that family for a hell of a long time, and,
right.
and I still am. And just, a year ago, the new incarnation of Grateful Dead was Dead and Company with, John Mayer and everybody else, and I got to sit in with them and enjoy that concert. And so life continues.
It's incredible. And when I've had John on a few times, we've talked a bit about the Shakti era. And also one of the things John remembers fondly about then is when you guys would be on the bill with different kinds of bands.
One of the tours that I remember in like 1977 or something was 3 bands touring together. It was Shakti, Weather Report, and Herbie Hancock Band.
Wow.
Yeah. And so what the promoter was the same for all of us, and so, what he did was he hired an airplane in which we would sit along with the crew and everybody, and then we'd fly from one city to another in Europe, and we'd perform. And it was never fixed as to, that one was the star band and the other ones were opener. Some days Shakti would close the evening, some days Herbie would, and some days Weather Report would. But the end of each one of those evenings, the 3 bands would be on stage, and we'd be doing jam sessions. There would be Jaco Pastorius and James Levi, the drummer from Herbie, and myself, and John, and Herbie, and Joe Zawinul, and Wayne, and all of us would be on stage, and we'd be like playing tunes. I mean, I remember one day we just played St. Thomas, and it went on for like 40 minutes. Everybody taking solos
Right.
and just going out, and the solos were not like, okay, you play two courses and so it goes by in about 30 seconds. No, it will be as long as Herbie wanted to play, he'd play, and then he'd nod to Wayne or John, and they'd take over, and then they would all retreat, and it would be the drummers who'd take off, and all that would happen. So this was like a regular thing, and also through the course of the evening, while the concerts were going on, and Herbie's band would be playing, and John and I would be in the back with Joe Zawinul and stuff, playing soccer or playing table tennis, and just kind of hanging out. It was like a family affair, and I can't tell you what an amazing thing that was to watch these people in their prime and hear them. And just like question them about rhythm, about the right symbol, and how they looked at rhythm, and how the chorus is planned in solos, and how the jazz form is, and Herbie talking about it, and that being a lesson, or Wayne mentioning stuff, and it was an out of the world experience, I have to say, and I could never have learned this in a school or in a conservatory, what I've learned from those gatherings.
You've done a lot of cool stuff, and very generous with your time too. I can't wait to
My pleasure, sir.
to get to spend a little time when you come here. As a final question for you, just out of curiosity, because John had some great advice to offer, meditation. I'm assuming meditation is still a big part of your life.
It most certainly is. In fact, in India, at least, music is considered one of the highest form of yoga, and musical tones like the drone is an amazing tool to be able to meditate. In fact, half the time when the musicians in India, when you walk into their house, you will hear this sound constantly, and that sound is the sound of the drone, the instrument, and it's considered that what we say in India is Nada Brahma, which means the sound is God. And so you will find that theory running all across Asia, like the Buddhist monk. They have a Tibetan meditation bowl, which they play, and it creates this same kind of drone tone that they meditate on. And similarly, the Indian musicians meditate on the drone. So the music is a very important part of meditation. And the sitting positions that we utilize when we are performing are the positions used for yoga and meditation as one of the asana or position as it's called. And so yoga and meditation are ingrained. It's a living and breathing part of our lives. And when we're playing music, the way the rhythmic breathing comes, whether you're singing or you're playing rhythms or playing an instrument, your breathing is timed to the way the tempos are and the way the melody is flowing. It's all one, and so there's no reason to be able to separate it. I mean, like you, for instance, when you start your day, it has a particular tempo and rhythm, and it carries on through the day, and it changes courses according to the interactions you are having. That's all a yogic process. That's all a meditative process. As long as you can focus on it and see into it in a multidimensional way, you will walk away with it rejuvenated, not tired. But if you just like, oh man, I'd like to get this over with and move on to the next thing, it will tire you out. It will not prepare you to be able to move on to the next thing that's coming your way through the day. So if you look at it in a meditative way, a focused way, it's really the most energetic way to go about it.
Do you have any advice for people who want to have a routine? Like they listen to you and they go, I want more of the clarity this guy has. I'm convinced. What should I do in the morning, Zakir? How do I start my day? Is there anything you can recommend for people as a routine?
Try to not be tense. Actually, the most important thing is don't be threatened. That is a very important lesson that I've learned. If you are threatened, your defenses are up in such a way that you are tense, you're anxious, you're nervous, and when that happens, it's not in any way good for your body. It doesn't help you. But if you are relaxed, you are not threatened, you approach all meetings, all interactions, and all gatherings in a way where you are so confident inside of yourself that in no way that's going to be able to disturb your equilibrium. That's the way to go. So not be threatened is very important. In our job, we are threatened. We want to get ahead, and we look at the guy next to us on another table and say, oh, I need to do better than this guy. And so it's a competition. It's never a competition for us. It's never a competition for me. I'm happy where I am. I am content with the amount of information that I have inside of me. I know there's more to get, but I'm not in a rush. I'm not in a hurry. I'm going to let it come to me in its own rhythm, and that's where it's at. I mean, it's not about becoming a master. It's always about being a great student. And as long as you journey along knowing that the learning process will continue from the day you arrive on this earth till the day you leave, you're going to be a student. You're not going to be a master. You're not threatened. And that's what is important.
That's fantastic advice and invaluable, and I humbly say thank you for that and taking the time for us.
Aloha, this is Zakir Hussain. When I'm not meditating or doing a ferocious percussion solo, I'm tuned right here. It's All Things Considered Hawaii Public Radio with my buddy Dave Lawrence. Please do me a favor and make a pledge. As you know, every little bit helps. Here's how, and thanks. Mr. Lawrence, I hope to catch you soon.
I look forward to it. Be safe, brother. God bless.
You too. Ciao, bye.
Bye.